Alright, hey, this is Nick. I'm here at Big Robot Games in Greer, South Carolina, and we're going to do a little unboxing video of the new Thunderstone Advance. Now this is from AEG, Alderac Entertainment Group, I believe, and what they basically did was they took a lot of feedback from their existing Thunderstone games, which there have been quite a few, 6 I think to date, both standalone and expansions, and they basically took the feedback from the community, things the community liked, things the community didn't like, and sort of did a reboot, so to speak, of the game, a 2.0, if you will. And this is the product of those revisions, Thunderstone Advance Towers of Ruin. So we're going to open this box here and take a look at the components inside and some of the things that they've changed from the original version of the game. Obviously, the artwork is awesome, as has always been in Thunderstone. All the other versions and expansions of the game have always had great artwork, both on the box and on the components themselves. So, keeping up with that here, obviously.
Child-proof box?
Yes, obviously. Maybe you can edit this part out.
No. This is comedy gold.
30-second count.
You can either eat a spoon of cinnamon or open this box. Alright. So, obviously, like with most games, you'll get the rules of play here. And this is a nice rule book. It's good size. It's got the artwork on the front. It's full color. Very well organized. It does a good job of explaining the setup of the game, the rules of the game, and another thing that I like that you'll find in a lot of these deck building games, as far as the rule books goes, if you flip towards the end, there'll usually be, let's see here, a card glossary. And what's great about the card glossary is it's got every single card, and it kind of further explains the rules text in case you're ever unclear about something. So, a lot of the time you'll be playing a game, and what does a Black Flock Ravener do? Well, and you look back here at the glossary, you get some additional explanation of what that card does. So that's come in very useful many times that I've played this game, just to be able to look and get that additional explanation of card text and rules. And then here it looks like you got new to Thunderstone. Read this first, kind of a quick start guide if you've never played the game before. Probably just a basic cards to use in your first game, because like Dominion, this is a deck building game, so it's going to be piles of cards you're using are going to be randomized each time you play. Now, one of the big things that I know that they did in this version that they don't in the other ones is that you have a board. Let me rephrase that. Dragonspire, one of the other ones, did come with a board, but it was a very small board, and the board that came with the other games was basically the top half of this whole board right here. The board just represented the dungeon. Well, here you can see with the board you're now given, the board represents all areas of the game. The dungeon and the town, where you have these nice slots here where you can organize all of the public cards that people are going to be buying on their turns. So it's really nice. There's space for everything. You know where everything goes. And what's cool about this, too, is in the original game, you basically had the dungeon. And the dungeon always had 3 ranks, right? And a certain light penalty. And you can see here they've retained the original dungeon on this side of the board, with just 3 ranks and the more difficult light penalties. Basically, the deeper you go, the more you're penalized when you try to attack monsters. So what they've done here is they've given you a 2-sided board with a dungeon side and a wilderness side. And you can see here that the wilderness side has 4 ranks instead of the 3 like the dungeon, and the light penalties here, or what's called darkness now, is much more forgiving, especially if you're a new player. So in rank 1 of the wilderness, your light penalty is only a 1, whereas in rank 1 of the dungeon, you can see here that it's immediately a 2. So the dungeon side, more for experienced players, and it gives you a little more of a challenging game. But I love this. I love this board. I love that they included this with the game. It's absolutely fantastic and long overdue, quite frankly. So loving that. Another thing that they've been doing for quite a few versions of the game now is giving you these lovely boxes that let you just organize your cards any which way you want. They give you a huge supply of these foam blocks here, as you can see, and the textured area you can see here in the box. It holds the cards really nicely in there, so you can separate all your cards out into different, categories, like your weapon cards, your armor cards, and then you got these nice separators, and these boxes too. I mean, this will be room enough in this box to house cards from the next several expansions. So you don't end up carrying around 6 boxes on game night. You got one box, you can fit all your stuff into it, so that's great. Love that. Another change that they made in one of the earlier expansions was you gain XP in this game, and it used to be represented by cards. And just something neat they did was they started including these experience tokens here, which are little plastic tokens. More of a cosmetic touch than anything, but still, a nice little touch that instead of having little cards, you can have these nice little tokens to represent your experience points. So. And then here you will have the different piles of cards themselves. Obviously, we're just opening this for the first time, so they are all still shrink wrapped up and very nice. But you can see some of the art here in these cards is just killer. AEG has always done a great job on the art for these cards, and is no exception. I mean, it's a high fantasy themed game. But with deck building elements. So if you're someone that has been taken to a game night and likes a game like Dominion, but you're more of a high fantasy person at the end of the day, this is your game right here. It's basically D&D meets Dominion. It's high fantasy deck building, so it's great.
So what's the deal with the basic deck compared to all the other ones?
This one?
Yeah.
These are randomizers, and what these are going to be used for, similar as in Dominion, is obviously there are many more cards than there are spaces in the town. In any given game that you play, you'll only have 2 or 3 weapons in the town. But included in all these cards are probably 8 or 9 or 10 weapons. So at the beginning of the game, you'll shuffle up these randomizers, and you'll deal out of your pile of weapon randomizers, you'll deal out 2 or 3 of them to decide which weapons you'll play with that game. So that in using the randomizers, you'll make sure that every time you play is always going to be a different game. Unless, of course, you're using any kind of pre-made scenario that specifically tells you which cards to use, which there are some in this instruction book, and of course people are coming up with them online all the time. You'll have like different monster types, for example, like dragons or ghouls or skeletons, and sometimes it's kind of fun to play a theme game where all of the monsters in your dungeon or wilderness are all skeletons or all dragons, or all of your weapons are melee weapons instead of having a mixture of like melee swords and magical wands and things like that. So it's up to the players really when you start the game whether you want to just completely randomize everything as to what cards you're going to play with that time, or if you want to specifically pick certain things to play more of a thematic type game.
Cool.
So.
Well, looks like an awesome game. Thanks for breaking it down for us. Any last thing you want to add?
Absolutely. No, I'm really looking forward to playing this. Like I said, they redid the anatomy of the cards to make them a little clearer. One of the big differences that you'll notice if you're familiar with cards from the other sets is that the cost of the card, or what it will cost to buy the card from the village, like this Dwarven Bear Hammer here, is represented by the number 4 here. And what they've done on the newer cards is they've shuffled the numbers around somewhat and made it a little more clear as to what the numbers represent. And in the older cards, the cost of an item was still here, but it was simply a number on top of a colored circle. So they've gone a step further and they've added this little money pouch here, which kind of, for someone that's kind of getting into it, they can look at that and say, okay, well, it's a money pouch, so that's the cost of the item. This here is the amount of money that the item provides if you play it out of your hand in the village. And again, this used to just be a number on like a little colored circle, and then they've kind of put that number on top of a coin there. So they've made the cards a little easier to look at and read and know what these numbers do, especially to someone that's newer to deck builders or newer to card gaming. So that I like a lot, because anything to make a good game more accessible, but that doesn't dumb it down, is always a good thing in my book.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. We're at Big Robot Games, so definitely come by and check out a copy, maybe get a game going.
Absolutely.
Thanks for watching.